Moving toward the general election, should you get the launch, should you run as the Republican candidate, Frank Pallone's been around a long time,
Mm-hmm.
and he's got a lot of money,
Mm-hmm.
and he's got a lot of he's had a lot of success, and he's got a lot of people who like him. Probably not a lot of the people who are watching this, but certainly he's got a lot of people who like him. I've been, full disclosure, I have been, let's say, loud in my criticisms of Frank Pallone.
Mm-hmm.
And perhaps, like many of us, not particularly willing to acknowledge his successes. What has Frank Pallone done that's positive? What are you fighting against when somebody says to you, yeah, but Frank Pallone did this wonderful thing? What is that wonderful thing that they're going to tell you Frank Pallone did?
They're probably going to say he's been very pro-environment, and I'm going to say it's strategic during the election season. I'm also going to say one thing Frank Pallone does right is he listens to his Republican opponents and tries to mimic their issues during the election season. And that's some of the reason why he's able to garner those votes and become reelected each time. I will tell you, this year is going to be different.
Okay.
And it must be different because when you look at Frank Pallone's voting record overall, he is social progressive in his voting record. He is one of the most liberal congressmen in Washington, and he is part of what is wrong with the way our government, our federal government, is operating right now. He is singularly and collectively with his colleagues responsible for the economic downturn that we're experiencing right now, which government at the federal level has contributed to progressively over many years. And he's been there for 2 decades. So he's part of that problem. He needs to be replaced with a conservative representative who is going to represent the will and the voice of the people, who's going to bring government down to the limits imposed by the Constitution and the intentions of our founding fathers, which is all federal government is supposed to be. It is not to be all things to all people. It is not supposed to solve all the ills of society. Federal government is supposed to be limited to doing the essential requirements of federal government. And the way to ensure that we limit federal government to its proper size and proper function is to read the Constitution.
What's Pallone's biggest failure? If you were to launch an attack on Frank Pallone right now, you would say Frank Pallone has failed at...
He has failed at controlling spending. He has failed at keeping government out of the economy and out of the way of business. He has failed at allowing competition between insurance companies and health providers, so that we can have good quality health care at reasonable cost. He has failed at ensuring that jobs and manufacturing stays within the state of New Jersey and within the United States generally. He's just missed the point.
Frank Pallone's going to come at you. You acknowledge it, everybody acknowledges it. Frank Pallone is the environmental guy.
Mm-hmm.
When you close your eyes and picture Frank Pallone, he's, picking up garbage on a beach somewhere. That's his thing.
Mm-hmm.
What environmental positions do you have to point to say, hey, Frank Pallone's wrong on the environment here, or is he right on the environment overall?
Well, I think his statements with regard to what our goals need to be with the environment, I would agree with. His method of implementation is stifling the economy and creating an economic nightmare. The overregulation of business in the area of environment within the state of New Jersey and federally has caused manufacturers to leave the state of New Jersey, has caused business to go offshore and out of the United States in order to function in a cost-effective manner. What government needs to do is get out of the way. The environmental goals can be reached by education of the consumer and through free market competition. Every business owner wants to be able to advertise themselves. Every manufacturer, every service provider wants to be able to advertise themselves as environmentally friendly. I believe incentives can be put in place, tax relief incentives for corporations that comply with certain requirements for that tax relief or that grant opportunity. I think that's enough to stimulate what is naturally progressing because of the will of the people. I think what we have to do is we have to encourage, through incentives, all of the manufacturers and those service providers that have left the country to come back on a national level. There needs to be a pride campaign made in the USA, provided by US workers. We've got to get this economy moving in the right direction. While I agree that the environment is extremely important, and I will focus on ensuring that we are not damaging in our policy to the environment. I mean, our natural resources are gifts. We need to preserve them. They're also one of our most valuable assets. We need to make sure that we maximize the value of that asset. But by the same token, we cannot stifle the economy while we do it. And Frank's off the mark with regard to that.
When we talk about Frank Pallone, of course, he's Congressional District 6, he's the congressman from New Jersey. What are the biggest challenges facing a congressperson from New Jersey? Because I think that that's an issue. We see people go to Washington, they're in Washington. Frank Pallone couldn't afford to live here, he had to live in Washington. Everybody remembers that whole routine. When we see people leave New Jersey, go to Congress, all of a sudden they're in Washington. They're supposed to be representing their congressional district here in New Jersey. So very specific to New Jersey and the CD6, what matters? What are you bringing back from Washington for this congressional district?
Well, the first point I'd like to make is my family isn't moving to Washington. I have a husband, I have 3 children. One of my children is about to embark on her first year in college. I need to be going back and forth, and that's going to happen. I'm a grassroots elected official. I won't know how to do my job in DC without keeping in touch with the people I represent. That's my method. That's my litmus for making sure I'm doing my job properly. So you're going to see me in Congressional District 6. My job in Washington is going to be to bring the voice from Congressional District 6 to Washington and come back and report on what I've been able to accomplish, where the difficulties are, and what the people of Congressional District 6 can do to support my efforts and the efforts of my conservative colleagues in Washington, D.C. I'm sure that I'm going to be traveling a lot in order to accomplish that. But I wouldn't feel that it's appropriate for me to set up residence out of my district. I plan on staying in the Borough of Highlands. My family will be staying in the Borough of Highlands, and I will be spending a lot of time in D.C., but I will be coming back to Highlands and to Congressional District 6 to meet in both counties, in all 4 counties. Yeah, but we're going to need to keep in touch because you need to keep good communication with your constituents if you want to do this job.
Frank Pallone, rather notoriously at one of the healthcare debates in Red Bank, one of his town hall meetings, said that it was okay with him if his constituents disagreed with his policy. He was going to vote the way he was going to vote, regardless of how his and I'm paraphrasing, regardless of how his constituents felt. What about you? What is your take, not specifically on healthcare, but on issues where perhaps a lot of your constituents disagree with your policy? What do you do in that situation?
You have to sit down and check yourself, because it's not about my policy. It's about what the people of my district wish to see happen in Washington. There's maybe 1 or 2 value issues where my morality would probably trump, and I would have to explain that. But for the most part, this government, our federal government, established via the Constitution, requires that the people govern themselves. How dare any representative in elected office in this government tell the people that they know better